Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Haydn Jones. I'm a Managing Director in Kroll's Data Insight Practice based out of here in London. And one of my roles is I act as an expert witness in relation to civil and criminal matters focused on digital assets. But today we're going to be talking about why high quality data is crucial for financial crime, fighting financial crime. That is based on an article that we published at the end of June. We're providing the link for that later on in the session. And absolutely delighted to be hosting this, our first LinkedIn Live session. If you have questions, please put them into the chat and we can pick them up as we work our way through. We'll probably run for about 30 minutes or thereabouts. And it's an absolute pleasure to be joined by, we've got Ashley Roche, who is the COO, General Counsel of MEMCO. So MEMCO are an investment management company that are specifically providing services for the not-for-profit sector. So super pleased to have Ashley with us. And then we've got Henry Lindemann, who is the COO for BlueFlame AI, and they develop financial services focused AI functionality specifically for the investment management space. So today, themes we want to explore are: what is the opportunity with AI as it relates to fighting financial crime? What's at stake if financial institutions get it wrong? And what's the payback if they get it right? So firstly, Ashley, to you, what's changed? What has happened since November 2022, that key date that I'm sure is all front and center of those who are focused on AI. So Ashley, tell me, what's changed since November 22?
Yeah, thanks, Hayden. A lot has changed since November 2022 when ChatGPT first launched. The use of ChatGPT and other AI technology has grown incredibly fast since that time. I think we've all seen the potential for this technology to really increase operational efficiencies within all of our organizations. And some of you may know these statistics, but just by way of example, ChatGPT acquired 1 million users in just 5 days after launching in November of 2022. By comparison, it took Facebook 10 months to reach 1 million users, and it took Netflix around 3.5 years to reach that number of users. And so ChatGPT AI technology is certainly being utilized at a very, very fast pace. I think ChatGPT gets approximately 600 million visits per month right now. And I think that's just because we're all seeing
600 million. 600
million, that's right. Yeah.
That's astonishing.
And so I think that's just a testament to how people are seeing the potential for this to impact the way that we run our businesses. So a lot's changed. I think that we're just in the very early stages of learning what this technology can do. And so it's a really exciting time.
So Henry, what's your view? Are you one of those ChatGPT users? How frequently do you go on there and see how the world has changed dramatically?
Yeah, I'm a daily user, Hayden. Growing up was not the most terrific writer, and it's leveled the playing field for people like us who, at the end of the day wanted to add a little more polish to our emails. I think it's worth just tracking that back to sort of the criminal world, and to remember that of those 600 visits, not all of them are the nice guys. And my background before founding BlueFlame with a number of my colleagues came from the cyber side, and I really see the parallels here between what's available in ransomware as a service, a number of other sort of kind of cyber tools, and what's now available using AI. And I think that's worth keeping front of mind in terms of the change. You've got dedicated tools helping people execute fraud, helping people execute forgeries, and for every piece of good, there's an arms race on the criminal side in order to be able to help people reproduce deceptive practices.
So you see this very much as the new weapon of mass destruction as it relates to a new wave of financial crime, let's say.
I think that a lot of what people would have relied on for the telltale signs of something being off in a manual review have become that much more difficult to rely on. And I think organizations, and I'd actually sort of say the most vulnerable are the very small and the very large, which are going to typically be either the most under-resourced or the slowest to change. Will have the hardest time staying ahead of the new tool set from what I'd call sort of innovative bad actors.
Okay, and then and then before we just get into the main body of the session, I'll just cut back to Ashley because I mean Henry makes a very valid point there in relation to the size of the entity, and then obviously you deal with the not-for-profit sector. Would you echo Henry's words on that, Ashley?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Henry makes a great point that this technology is also available to the criminals out there, and so. Not only do I think it's important for organizations to be paying attention to AI so they can use it for good within their organization, but it's equally, if not more important, for organizations to be learning about the AI technology that's available so that they can fight financial crime against the bad actors as well. And so educating employees on the technology that's available, ways criminals are using it to commit crimes, permissible uses for employees to use it within their organizations is very important.
Brilliant. Well, let's just for the sake of interest and audience research, let's throw that out as a question. I mean, throw that out to the audience. Just provide us with any examples of how you've used ChatGPT today. And we can then pick those up at the end of the session. So, right, so we've got this whole challenge there that we've got, AI gives us this ability to create, higher quality materials in relation to and processes and algorithms as it relates to perpetuating financial crime. Across to you, Ashley. I mean, you're very much the cold face in terms of what you do as an investment management entity. You're a seasoned industry veteran. I mean, what's your view from a broad perspective in relation to the opportunity for financial institutions? And just as a reference point, one piece of survey work that we undertook last year sort of identified about 80% of respondents said very clearly that they were thinking about actively implementing or had implemented some kind of AI framework for fighting financial crime in a compliance context. So that's 80% of the respondents that we had there. But I mean, what's your own view, Ashley, in terms of the opportunity for financial institutions?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think honestly the opportunities are endless. To Henry's point earlier, the bad actors are using it, so that increases the importance for us to be using it in our own compliance infrastructure as well. Just very broadly speaking, these AI models can help fight financial crime based on their ability to detect deviations from normal transaction patterns. The technology can obviously do that much quicker and arguably much more effectively than humans can do it ourselves. It can be used to analyze user behavior, to identify suspicious activities, again, more quickly and arguably more effectively than humans. MEMCO specific.
When you say suspicious activities, actually, what sort of suspicious activities do you come to mind?
Yeah, so any type of email that is attempting to imitate an email from a quote unquote normal or valid service provider. A lot of times these phishing attempts are very similar to an email you would ordinarily receive from a custodian or a bank that is looking to have you wire money to them. And so with this technology, it can help you identify even just a slight variation from what would otherwise be a valid email.
So at one level, we've got AIs potentially fighting AIs, haven't we? Because
That's
we've got
right. Yeah.
AI generated content that is malicious, that has to be detected by AI algorithms that are actually looking for malicious type activity. So that's your perspective, the opportunity for financial institutions. Henry, do you have a view on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, just to probably pass that point a little bit more, you've got the opportunity for a for a firm to leverage AI to fight, call it pre-2022 threat vectors, right? So run through checks faster. If it's repeatable, process driven, if it's semantic in nature, then an AI solution will be able to, I think, bolster it. I think it's part of the solution, probably not the solution. We, at the end of the day, we're not throwing out kind of what's worked before. We're supplementing it.
Yeah. And
then the second vector would be when an AI-based threat vector comes across a traditional solution. Is that sufficiently robust to detect it? Right? Are you relying, for example, on junior resources who are dealing with volume, who haven't been trained on this? And so the opportunity, I think, if I was just to oversimplify it a little bit, the opportunity is find a way to do more of what you already do well using an AI technology. And then also on the risk side, ensure that what you've always done historically accounts for the fact that there will be an elevated quality of attack.
Yeah.
And I'd probably parse those two out as distinct AI-related financial crimes, risk and opportunity.
Fascinating. I mean, I would sort of build on that. I mean, I see plenty of opportunity in my career, starting in investment banks and working my way through consulting firms and, previously the Bank of England, obviously now working at Kroll. I mean, it's incredibly powerful for generating relatively standardized documents. So, in a procurement context is a good example, RFPs as well. I think the golden rule is not to just accept it at face value, is actually just to just use it and work your way through it and check the content that it generates. But it's very, very useful, very, very useful tool to have. I can see some responses we've already got through in the chat there. So what about the risks then? What about the risks, Ashley? What do you worry about? I mean, if you've got AI at the center of your business, what are you worried about in terms of the way you use it on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the first risk that comes to mind is just data privacy and security. I know that's a pretty well-known risk, but it's important to provide employees a safe environment to use this really interesting technology. But if you don't provide employees that opportunity, based on the numbers we talked about earlier, they are going to use AI platforms, and so you're going to risk having confidential information potentially disclosed. And so privacy and security is the primary risk that comes to mind. Another risk is something Henry touched on a few minutes ago, but it's just over-reliance on this technology. I liked the way you said it, Henry, in that this should supplement any efforts that you're using to fight financial crime. It certainly should not replace human analysis and oversight. So just taking that and applying it to the phishing example, you simply can't rely on AI to detect any and all phishing attempts. You have to continue to train your employees on what to look for and what to avoid clicking on. So over-reliance really can be, I think, a big risk, just because people are really excited about this technology, and it appears to be able to give you really interesting, good responses quickly. But you can't over-rely on the technology, or I think you fall into the risk of having gaps within your compliance infrastructure.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point there. Over-reliance is something which I think we all need to bear in mind when we're using this, especially when you generate these documents. You have to work your way very carefully through them to ensure that they're accurate and correct. Henry, do you have a view on risks?
I'd probably just say the depth of what a bad actor is able to do has been exponentially increased. I'll use an example. At BlueFlame, we've received solicitations from unknown entities that on its face, they raise red flags, right? But at the same time, they purport to be from potential clients. And historically, when I would have gone in or followed a link to a website or, just sort of in a safe and thoughtful manner, done a little bit more homework to figure out who was contacting me, I would have been able to figure it out within 30 seconds. But now you find very, very high quality websites, extensive background provided, and the ability to use, I'd say, standard commercial tools. And I think this is probably, if anything, going to accelerate, right? It'll be easier to stand up a website with a prompt in 6 months than it ever was before. I think the level of background and illusion that can be created will continue to accelerate. And so as a result, I think you're going to have a process by which you don't just take what the attackers give you, right? It's a little bit like a callback on an hash transfer. You're going to have an independent source, maybe a data source, to validate the identity of who you're speaking to. The other thing I would say, just to kind of wrap in something all of our regulated clients are thinking about, Ashley talked about external data privacy. There's also the concept of we think about a lot about internal data privacy, right? The threat of the insider can potentially increase as an AI solution is implemented and potentially circumvents well-designed permission schemes. And then finally, the regulatory risk of using an AI tool and the perception that any regulator might have on the quality of the output.
Interesting.
And it's going to be very important to be able to explain clearly how the process was supplemented and not necessarily corners being cut when using AI tooling.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Have you had any experience of that in the context of dealing with the regulators at all, Henry?
I'd say, it's an evolving space, and I'd draw a parallel versus having direct experience. It's just so new, right? The SEC, which is what the primary regulator for BlueFlame clients, is in sweep mode at the moment. They're gathering information. They're asking questions about, I would say less about how are your compliance processes being enhanced, and more about how do you make sure that you're not favoring one client over another. I think the natural extension is to go back to the rules that are on the books, right? The rules that are on the books that are designed to fortify compliance policies and procedures, and to ask the same questions they've always asked with an AI asterisk, which is, give me confidence that your internal controls, procedures, and compliance programs continue to meet or exceed my expectations as a regulator. But no, nothing that we've come across personally. I think it's a matter of time, though, Hayden.
Ashley, so I mean, obviously we're talking about AI-driven threats, and then obviously there's a response in terms of frameworks that we build to fight against those. What's the challenge as it relates to faulty data? Because having come out of data-rich environments, several golden rules. You only record the data once and once only. If you want to, you've got to have a retention policy for your data, and then you shouldn't be moving data around the organization and duplicating it, because it generates mismatches, and obviously the data needs to be current and up to date. You get discrepancies between systems. So all of that introduces a level of faultiness, and then obviously all of that then flows up through these models. What's the impact then of the risk of having faulty data that's ingested into these different models?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, it's something that we personally are spending a lot of time on right now, because in order to effectively use any of these AI platforms, you have to have quality, structured guess technically not structured, but data that's organized and that you can have confidence that when it's fed into these systems, you're going to get accurate responses from. And so data integrity is paramount prior to building out and using AI platforms. Similar to that, you have to learn how to talk to the bot and know what questions to ask and how to ask the questions so that it can then pull from the data that you've provided and provide accurate answers. And so both the data integrity that's being fed into the system and then training your employees on how to properly prompt engineer and ask questions related to that data is crucial to being able to utilize these platforms effectively. And just really quick, I'll give a quick example of how we saw this come into play just earlier this week. But we have an AI platform that we've authorized our employees to use. And we had an employee ask the platform a question related to the Investment Advisors Act of 1940. But when they asked the question initially, they just referenced the Advisors Act, all lowercase letters, nothing very specific. And the response that they got was wrong, and
Right.
they knew that it was wrong. And so they asked the question much more specifically, referenced the Investment Advisors Act of 1940, appropriately capitalized, and the response it got was vastly different. And that was the only change made to the question. Yeah. And so, you know, these platforms are pulling from your data. That data has to be accurate data. It can't be confusing to the bot to pull. But then you also have to ask questions in a manner that's going to help the bot pull from that data.
That's brilliant. I'm just looking at the chat actually. So we've got people on there we've got NYC. We've got actually somebody says what hasn't happened since November 22, which I think is a brilliant response. We've got people in Toronto, Nigeria, Manila. We've got India. We've got Sao Paulo, Buenos Aires. That's a really fabulous international community of people that joined us for this. Right, so faulty data. Thank you for that, Ashley. And let's break this up. So, Henry, what is bias? I hear that as a term that is sort of bandied around. You give me your 2 penneth worth on what bias is, and then I'm going to cut to Ashley, and then Ashley can give me a good example of where bias has impacted a business scenario.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the very public, well-known sort of Google Gemini rollout, which was evidence of, I suppose, bias distorting the intended output. And there is between a sort of a large language model kind of training on everything, it's going to be a product of where it's trained. It's very important that in between a generalist tool and a specific task, that you do have training so that it understands the nomenclature. And I'm going to bring in the last response, right? The difference between the Investment Advisors Act of 1940 and the Advisors Act, and really show that it's from a technical perspective, it can be a similar concept, right? Which is, if you have told the LLM in all of its training, and I'll use the concept of a fund because it's a bit clearer. So an investment fund, to certain parts of the financial services world, has a very specific definition. A fund has a very general definition, but a professional who sits at Ashley's firm, for example, or mine, talks about funds all the time and knows it means investment funds. So bias can be introduced when that training is in conflict with, right, or potentially irrelevant to that particular use case. And so I tend to think that, often it's well-intentioned. Absolutely, there's the opportunity for it to be poorly intentioned. But there needs to be certain vetting along the way to ensure that the instructions that the technology is being given does not favor unintentionally or unethically one result over the other. I think that this is largely solvable. I think are probably, you know, not necessarily in the consensus view on this one. But it's important to put in between you and a tool meant for everyone, a tool, some layer or some level of context and agreement on use cases, specific terms, nomenclature, in order to be able to achieve what you want. I think another use of or concern on bias is, for example, the preferencing of one investor over another using an automated or systematic tool, which ultimately comes back to the same thing that I was talking about earlier, which is the rules are on the books for a reason. The rules are expected to be observed regardless of the new technology.
Yeah.
And how do you ensure that whatever you are putting to accelerate, ensure productivity is not, at the end of the day, you know, coming away from what you've, both the contract and the expectations that you have with your clients or stakeholders and the folks that regulate you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Henry. Ashley, do you have a view on that?
Yeah, no, I think that that's a great point, Henry. And I think it's important to note that a lot of times the biases that may be built into these systems are well-intended and not intended to be used maliciously in any manner. But we have seen examples in the past of where these systems did show a bias. Those biases did have impacts on the consumers who were utilizing whatever service was being provided. An example of that, as a study a few years ago found that an advertising system showed high-paying job ads to men more often than women, which obviously means that women were less likely to see those opportunities. Most likely that was not the intention of the algorithm that was built in. But I think the key point is just to be aware that these systems can have biases, and think critically about the output that is being presented to assess whether there could potentially be a bias built in that you then need to address. So I think just thinking critically, again, not over-relying on the technology without putting thought into whatever it's producing is important, because as Henry mentioned, it can be fixed.
I think that's that term you used there is absolutely spot on. So thinking critically in terms of what you've actually created. So we're saying that the world has changed dramatically, and I think one of the comments in the chat is that what hasn't changed. We've got, you know, I think we're very much all in the same place, that there's a massive opportunity for FIs, but there's also a massive opportunity in relation to continuing to perpetuate and create new forms of threat vectors to deliver, you know, financial crime into entities and individuals. The risks, you know, I think principally we're talking about, you know, making sure the underlying data is of the highest quality. And actually, there's a good comment in there. It says, I think it's Kishore. It says proper data checks at the early stages are easy to rectify, rather ending up than, you know, you having mismatches at the end, which I think that's a really, really important point. Well done. Thank you for that, Kishore. And then we touched on, you know, we touched quite significantly there on bias, which I think is something we all need to be very, very aware of and close to in terms of the way we think about how to implement this technology. We've got about, let me see, we've got about 2 minutes to go thereabouts. So if we finish about 31 minutes past the hour. Right, Henry, sir, to you, what's the best piece of advice you can offer all of these wonderful people that have joined from around the world?
I want to go and touch on Clive's comment about hallucinations and the risk that they pose, and tie it back into the point you made on data. So Clive, absolutely hallucinations are a big risk. It underscores the importance of having the correct tool set pointed at sources that are trusted. And that reduces exponentially the risk of hallucinations. The AI engine is unlikely at that point, when given a much more limited set of data against which to answer, to produce an incorrect answer. But I think it's probably the one thing that we didn't touch on enough was how do you mitigate the risk of hallucination in that? And I think there's a lot of great research on this about the power of extractive AI within the generative space. So anyway, sorry, I don't know if that was
no
nail on the head, but it was a great comment. I wanted to call it out.
No, and that's fair enough, because you've got complete discretion as to how you come back on that. I think Kishore is asking, are there any special regulations in place when we're moving to AI? I think the answer to that question is in the box above, because I know that European regulators are pretty tough, and I know the UK's they've got the start of a framework that they're in the process of delivering that to the financial service community. Ashley, any best piece of advice?
Yeah, the two things I would mention is just explore AI. If you don't, I think that here in a couple of years, you may be at a big competitive disadvantage to your peers, and you're also going to be less capable of fighting financial crime, because I think one thing we're all sure about is the criminals are exploring the ability to use this to get within your organization. And then the second is take a risk-first approach to AI. We've talked about biases, hallucinations, data security. There certainly are risks that come along with using this technology. Take a risk-first approach. Make sure that you feel confident that you're providing a safe environment for employees to use this. Address hallucinations, biases, data security, etc. But then once you address those, provide your employees an opportunity to really utilize this technology to improve the way they do their jobs.
Fabulous, fabulous. I'll just provide 2 points on that. In the immortal words of my chemistry teacher, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. So if you're going to climb into this, you need to do it, with your eyes wide open. And actually, that sort of builds on the second point, which is you really got to get in there and get your hands dirty, because this is not something you just stand back from and just have some kind of high level veneer of a project management team that's working their way through a AI financial crime model. You really have to get stuck in and actually understand where the data is coming from, how it's being used. So listen, thank you for all the comments. Let's just see what else we've got in there. I love using it as a tool, but I always check and verify basically as I use my due diligence, knowledge and experience, which is great. We've got faulty outputs from AI hallucinations. That's the Clive Snowden comment. Data sources are extremely vital for accurate analytics. So checking the sources is #1 priority, which is brilliant. AI is a good tool, but needs to be checked and double checked from a risk viewpoint. So I think many of those comments are echoing some of the points that we've made. So listen, we've got the article. We'll post the link for the article in the chat. So that's why high quality data is crucial to fighting financial crime. So that was published at the end of June of this year, authored by myself and a number of other colleagues from across Kroll. It's an absolute pleasure to have hosted this, our first LinkedIn Live session. Thank you very much indeed to Ashley and Henry for joining us. Otherwise, I wish you all well. Do follow us on LinkedIn. This is available on LinkedIn for a download, and I wish you all well and look forward to seeing you all in the future. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.